Welcome to the Institute of Museum and Library Services webinar, IMLS Rescue Plan Grants 2021 information session. My name is Cindy Landrum.
My name is Chris Reich.
And we are pleased you could join us and that you are interested in preparing an application for the IMLS American Rescue Plan Grants Program. Our goal in this presentation is to provide specific information about the IMLS American Rescue Plan Grants Program and to make some recommendations that you may wish to consider when preparing your application. In this presentation, we will be addressing the following topics: program goals and objectives, performance measures, important dates and times, the question of how much and how many, allowable and unallowable costs, what you can and cannot include in your project, application components, application tips, and IMLS staff contact information. The American Rescue Plan Act, passed by the U.S. Congress, appropriated $200 million to the Institute of Museum and Library Services. $15 million of this appropriation have been allotted to support project proposals submitted to the IMLS American Rescue Plan Grants Program.
This grant program has 2 program goals and 3 objectives associated with each goal. Each applicant should align their proposed project with one of these 2 goals and one of the associated objectives. Goal 1 is to strengthen the institutional capacity of museums, libraries, and related organizations to respond to community needs quickly, effectively, efficiently, and responsibly. Objective 1 is to advance digital inclusion through approaches that may include, but are not limited to, improving digital platforms, online services, connectivity such as hotspots, and creating digital literacy programs, as well as creating new processes and procedures needed to sustain a robust online environment. Objective 2 will support hiring new staff and training or retraining existing staff to ensure a workforce that has the appropriate knowledge, skills, and abilities. Objective 3 focuses on building community-focused partnerships, networks, and alliances with organizations such as other nonprofits, school systems, service organizations, community groups, government agencies, or institutions of higher education, all with an emphasis on complementing rather than duplicating resources and services. Goal 2 is to increase the ability of museums, libraries, and related organizations to deliver programs and services that contribute to the well-being of families, groups, and individuals of all cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds. Objective 1 will support the creation and delivery of online and in-person educational, interpretive, and experiential programs and exhibitions for learners of all ages. Objective 2 is to provide trusted spaces for community engagement and dialogue to foster recovery and rebuilding. And Objective 3 supports efforts to collect, preserve, manage, and interpret documentary sources and tangible objects representing all aspects of the COVID-19 pandemic experience. While aligning your proposal with one of the goals and objectives we've outlined, projects may continue, enhance, or expand existing programs and services, or they may launch new ones to address those needs. The most competitive proposals will be framed as responses to needs of the community or a target audience, providing data-based evidence of how those needs were identified as resulting from or exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic will further strengthen your proposal to this program.
A new federal requirement this year that experienced applicants may not recognize is the Performance Measurement Plan. For this program, applicants must let us know how they will measure the degree to which the project activities will meet the expectations of the target audience, and also the extent to which each primary activity will be completed within the proposed timeline. A one-page performance measurement plan must be submitted with the application. In the NOFO, you will find a sample chart that shows how this can be easily prepared, and there is a link to a fillable version of this chart if you wish to use it. You can also provide your own one-page approach to describing how you will measure the quality and timeliness of your project activities.
Here are important dates related to applications to this program. Applications must be received through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, June 28th, 2021. This date is non-negotiable. The timestamp is auto-generated by the grants.gov system, and we have no ability to override it. IMLS American Rescue Plan Grant Awards will be announced in October 2021, and awarded projects must be scheduled to start on the first day of November 2021 and be no more than 1 year in length. Please make sure that everyone involved in preparing your grant application is aware of these dates.
All requests for IMLS funding must be between $10,000 and $50,000. If your request for funding falls outside of this range, your application will be rejected and not reviewed. With two exceptions, requests to this program must include at least a 1-to-1 non-federal cost share. Cost share can take a number of forms. Among them are cash, the value of staff or volunteer time engaged in project activities, third-party contributions, grants from foundations, and support from state or local government. Cost share cannot come from other federal sources. Applicants applying as federally recognized Indian tribes or as nonprofit organizations that primarily serve and represent Native Hawaiians are exempt from the cost share requirement in this program.
We'll turn now to allowable and unallowable costs for your project. Be very careful in preparing your proposal and include only allowable costs in both your IMLS request and your cost share. On the next slides, we'll go through some common expenses that are allowable and unallowable, but for those who want to dig into the details, please see Title II, Subtitle A, Chapter 2, Part 200 of the Code of Federal Regulations covering uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards, otherwise known as 2 CFR 200 for short. These regulations are available online in a searchable format on the U.S. Government Publishing Office website, and a tiny URL link is listed on this slide. Of particular interest is Subpart E, Cost Principles, a small section of which is shown on the right side of this slide. In the IMLS American Rescue Plan Grants Notice of Funding Opportunity, we provide a partial list of the most common examples of allowable costs as listed here. These costs may be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for and/or what you will pay for as part of your cost share. The rules about allowability apply to both sides of your budget. We also provide a list of generally unallowable costs, again, both for IMLS funds and for cost share. These costs may not be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for, nor can they be part of what you will pay for as part of your cost share. In fact, unallowable expenses can't show up anywhere in your proposal. As you prepare your application, it's a good idea to compare your list of proposed expenses against these lists of allowable and unallowable costs and against the appropriate set of cost principles.
Up next are the application components. Your application will consist of a series of individual documents, and it's very important to make sure you prepare and submit everything you should. These application components fall into two categories for this program. The first is that of required documents. All applications must include the documents listed here. Omission of even just one might result in your application's rejection. Also important to note are page limits. If you exceed the page limit specified in the notice of funding opportunity, we must remove the extras before your application goes out for review. So make sure your content fits into the page limit specified, and make sure the number of pages holds when you convert your document to a PDF. The second category of application components is that of conditionally required documents. Some applications must include one, two, or even all four of these, and it's your job to figure out which are required for yours. If you're applying as a nonprofit, then you must include your proof of nonprofit status issued by the Internal Revenue Service. If you are applying as a nonprofit organization that primarily serves or represents Native Hawaiians, the Notice of Funding Opportunity will explain special requirements in this instance. If you're using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate in your budget, then you must include a copy of your final rate agreement. Finally, if you will create digital products during the course of your project, then you must prepare and submit a digital products plan. Guidance for preparing such a plan is provided in Appendix 4 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Those who have applied for IMLS grants in the past may note that this particular program does not include supplementary information and documents as conditionally required documents. You should not attach any additional materials of this kind to your application. They will be deleted if you do so.
Now let's talk about the narrative for your proposal. You have only 3 pages to cover 3 very important issues: the project justification, the project work plan, and the project results. For the project justification section, you should state which program goal and associated objective of the IMLS American Rescue Plan grant program your project will address, as we outlined earlier in this webinar. You will need to describe the COVID-19 related need, problem, or challenge your project addresses, and tell us how you identified it. You should include some kind of relevant data from one or more reliable sources that helped you to identify and document that need, problem, or challenge that your project is meant to address. Finally, tell us who will be served by your project. Will it be elementary age students, preschoolers, seniors, certain target audiences within your community, the campus student body, or some other component of your community? The project work plan is the second section of the narrative, where you identify who will do what activities, when, and using what resources. We also want you to explain how you will track your progress toward achieving your proposed results and what you'll do if you need to correct course along the way. The third and final section of your narrative will be focused on articulating your project's intended results. This section is your chance to convince the reviewers that your project will result in something getting better. Be sure to tie the results to the need or problem you identified in the project justification, the first part of the narrative. Very importantly, this is where you can make a strong case that the project you've proposed will help your community or target audience recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. This is important because that's what these funds are intended to do. So to recap, your narrative has 3 sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results. And you have 3 pages for it. We recommend that you use all 3 pages. You should also consider the criteria we ask reviewers to consider in their evaluation of your application. These review criteria and information on the review process can be found in Section E of the NOFO on pages 18 to 19.
At this point, we'd like to share a few tips gleaned from our collective experience in working with applications submitted to our funding programs each year. First on the list, make sure your registrations are complete and your passwords and usernames are current. You must have a DUNS number, an active SAM.gov registration, and a current and functional grants.gov registration. And if you're just starting out, you'll need to acquire them in that order. In other words, you must have a DUNS number to register with SAM.gov. You must have an active SAM.gov registration to register with grants.gov. It's crucial to remember that your SAM.gov registration expires each year and you must renew it. You can check your status at any time by going to www.sam.gov. In addition, your grants.gov password expires every 60 days, and leaving accounts inactive for a year or more can result in the removal of all account roles. So make sure you know who your grants.gov authorized organization representative is, and be sure the username and updated password are in place. Both the SAM.gov and the grants.gov websites have robust help features and FAQs. We recommend that you check out the status of these registrations today. Don't wait until a few days before the deadline, or you may find yourself unable to submit your application. Some important things to know. Our regulations state clearly that we can make grants only to eligible applicants that submit complete applications, including attachments, on or before the deadline. If you aren't already, become familiar with the grants.gov workspace. It has been available as an option for a couple of years now, and it is now the only option. It has many good features, including upfront validation, which allows you to correct errors prior to submission, and the opportunity to collaborate with others in creating your application. As you write your narrative, avoid generalities, acronyms, and jargon. People who will review your application are experts, but they may not totally be familiar with your particular field's shorthand. Make it easy for them to understand what you mean. Check your spelling, grammar, and math. It makes a difference with reviewers. Be sure your application is complete. Check it against the table of application components in the notice of funding opportunity, and then check it again. We know that the application period for this program is very short. Even so, if you can submit to grants.gov early, even a day early, so you can correct possible errors and avoid any trauma created by technology challenges that might happen on the day or night of the actual deadline on June 28th.
Thank you very much for your interest in IMLS and in our American Rescue Plan Grants program. We hope you found the information in this webinar helpful. Cindy and I are the primary contacts for this program at this time. Please feel free to email us with any questions you might have about what you've heard or seen in this webinar or in the online materials. We will do our best to help. We also thank you for the good work you do for your communities. We wish you good luck with the application process, and we look forward to seeing your application later this month.